Have you noticed that some men don't argue, explain, or justify? They don't raise their voices. They don't beg for approval. They don't fight to be noticed. Instead, they withdraw. And when they do, the atmosphere changes. The room feels colder. People grow uneasy. Silence becomes louder than any words. That isn't weakness. It's deliberate strength. Machiavelli understood this deeply. To him, withdrawal is not retreat. It's influence through absence. He wrote, "A prince must know how to disappear without losing authority, because when absence is intentional, it becomes a mirror. And in that mirror, people see more than you. They see their own dependence, their entitlement, their discomfort at losing access to what they once took for granted. People don't fear losing your affection. They fear losing their control over you. They don't miss you. They miss their ability to summon you. And if you've been the man who always shows up, who responds even when it drains you, who explains just to keep peace, you weren't loved, you were used." Machiavelli reminds us that predictability isn't virtue, it's liability. The man who is always available is never respected, and the man who is never respected is always controlled. You may think your kindness builds connection, but kindness without boundaries breeds contempt. You become background noise, an emotional servant at their call, and every time you say yes when you should have said nothing, you trade dignity for the illusion of being needed. Machiavelli would call that weakness, dressed as virtue. He'd warn, never let your value be measured by your willingness to please. When you're always there, you lose scarcity, and scarcity is the foundation of power. So next time you're tempted to over-explain, to prove yourself, or to reassure those who never reassured you, don't vanish out of spite. Step back with strategy. Reintroduce yourself as someone no longer enslaved to others' needs, but as a sovereign presence whose silence carries more weight than words. Withdrawal isn't cowardice, it's growth. It's the moment you stop reacting and start positioning. It's when you become unpredictable, unreachable, untouchable. That's when the world pays attention. Because when you disappear without explanation, they're not asking what happened to you. They're asking what power you found that finally made you stop explaining. If this resonates, comment, "I disappear to reclaim my power." And if you want to walk further down this path of silent strategy, subscribe, not to follow the noise, but to rise above it as a man who no longer chases respect, but commands it by withdrawing. The price of being too predictable. Why easy access kills respect. If you want to survive in a world ruled by perception, you must let go of the illusion that goodness alone will protect you. The truth is harsh. Being useful is not power. Being predictable is not loyalty. And being always available is the death of respect. From birth, you were trained to be agreeable, say yes. Don't cause trouble, show up early, respond quickly, apologize even when you're not wrong. But Machiavelli would laugh at that conditioning. He didn't believe in blind obedience, he believed in power management. If you're always accessible, always explaining, you've already surrendered your throne. The man who makes himself cheap will never be seen as rare. You may believe quick replies show commitment. You may think constant availability builds connection, but in reality, it builds expectation, and expectation always destroys appreciation. Machiavelli saw through this illusion. He wrote, "The man who seeks to be loved by all becomes a slave to the ungrateful. People don't respect the one who always says yes. They exploit him. Here's how it plays out. They send a message. You respond instantly. They complain. You explain. They create chaos. You bring peace. You become their fixer, their validation source, their disposable shield. But you weren't born to carry broken people. You were born to build a life rooted in your own values, not theirs." Machiavelli wouldn't comfort you here. He'd wake you up. He'd say, when they expect you, Withdraw. When they depend on you, detach. When they assume you're theirs, remind them you belong to no one, because the man who cannot disrupt expectations will always be ruled by them. You think explaining yourself makes you noble, but to manipulators, your explanations are confessions. Your transparency is their weapon, and your kindness without limits becomes a leash. So what should you do? Break the pattern. Interrupt the rhythm. Withdraw without notice. Let them wonder what changed. Let them feel the absence they pretended didn't matter. Let their comfort collapse under the weight of your new boundaries. This is how you reclaim control, by replacing predictability with selective silence, by responding only when it serves you, by remembering that your time, energy, and attention are not rights, they're rewards. So the next time you feel pressure to respond, pause. Ask yourself, does this person truly deserve a piece of my inner world, or are they addicted to the version of me that never says no? If the answer isn't a strong yes, then it's a strategic no. This isn't cruelty, it's clarity. It isn't arrogance, it's sovereignty. If these words sting, let them burn through the parts of you trained to be controlled. And if you're ready to dismantle the version of yourself taught to serve without limit, write in the comments, "My predictability is my enemy," and subscribe, not to follow another voice, but to strengthen your own. Because from this moment forward, you are not their solution. You are not their convenience. You are a man in command. Psychological energy. Are you spending it or being drained? In every war, the wisest generals don't fight every battle. They don't waste arrows on shadows. They calculate. They hold back. They strike only with precision. Why? Because their greatest weapon isn't the sword. It's the energy to wield it at the right moment. Now apply that to your own life. Every conversation you engage in, every insult you respond to, every small emotional fire you put out for others costs you something, and most men don't even realize they're being drained. They wake up exhausted, not from hard work, but from exposure. Exposure to people who drain them, situations that weaken them, habits that leak energy drop by drop until nothing remains but resentment. Machiavelli wouldn't call this burnout. He'd call it strategic failure, because the man who wastes his strength on trivial battles has nothing left for the real war. And make no mistake, your energy is not endless. It's currency. Who you give it to reveals who you serve. Carl Jung said, "Every thought, every emotion draws from a limited reservoir," but Machiavelli would go further. He wouldn't just protect energy, he'd weaponize it. He'd use it like a king uses gold, not to be generous, but to secure advantage. You may think you're being noble by always showing up, by answering every demand, by defending yourself in pointless arguments. But here's the reality. Every time you react, you're being mapped, studied, and controlled. Manipulators don't need to overpower you. They just need you to waste yourself, and you give it away, calling it kindness. But what you're really doing is surrendering your kingdom. Machiavelli would never accept that. He'd instruct, withdraw your energy from the meaningless, let fools destroy themselves in the silence you refuse to break. Because when you stop giving what they want, your validation, your time, your attention, you become dangerous. They'll call you cold, they'll call you distant, they'll call you selfish. But Machiavelli would smile, because now you are no longer predictable. You are no longer easily provoked. You've become unreadable, and the unreadable man cannot be controlled. You were never meant to give yourself away like a public fountain. You were built to protect your inner strength like a fortress. When your energy is guarded, your presence becomes rare. And when your presence is rare, it becomes influence. So here's your command. Stop defending yourself in pointless conflicts. Save your strength for battles that matter. The next time someone demands a reaction, pause and ask yourself, do they want resolution, or do they simply want control? If the answer isn't clear, stay silent. Not because you're weak, but because you refuse to be manipulated. Type this below if it resonates. My energy feeds no fools, and subscribe if you're ready to protect your power, not with noise, but with clarity. From this point forward, you don't react, you calculate, you conserve, you rise. Silence and the collapse of the mask. Silence is not retreat. It is not surrender, and it is certainly not weakness. Silence is strategy. It is a trap hidden in stillness. It is the weapon of those who no longer move to the rhythm of others. Machiavelli never saw silence as absence. He saw it as camouflage. He wrote, "The wise man does not need to lie. He only needs to withhold." In a world where everyone shouts, the one who remains silent becomes a threat. When you go silent, you break the pattern. You step outside their script. You become unreadable. And what people can't read, they can't control. Those who once praised your kindness and availability grow restless when you stop playing along. They used to call you dependable. Now they call you distant. They used to say you were kind. Now they claim you've changed. But understand this, they were never admiring your character. They were praising your compliance. They didn't value you, they valued their influence over you. Machiavelli understood this well. He knew that when silence enters a room, it doesn't calm people, it exposes them. He'd say, silence doesn't confuse the strong, it only terrifies the manipulative, because silence breaks the mirror. Those who once used you to reflect their comfort are forced to face themselves, and most cannot bear what they see. They loved you when you were predictable, when you echoed them, saved them, distracted them. But when you go silent, they must confront the emptiness they hid behind your presence. This is when the mask falls. Those who once smiled at you will accuse you. They'll label your silence arrogance, your boundaries cruelty, your growth betrayal. Do not react. In that moment, you're watching illusion collapse. Carl Jung called it the breakdown of the persona, the mask we wear to be accepted. Machiavelli framed it differently. Only when the mask falls does the real game begin, because now you are no longer who they want you to be. You are who you choose to be. Not polite, not predictable, but powerful. You no longer explain. You no longer soothe. You no longer answer just to keep peace. Let them misinterpret your silence. Let them spiral. Let them waste their energy trying to decode what you withhold. Because the greatest exposure doesn't come from confrontation. It comes from withdrawal. So here is your command. Do not explain. Do not chase. Do not clarify. Let the silence speak. Let it unsettle those who relied on your obedience. And if this speaks to the part of you that is done performing, write this in the comments. My silence is the end of their illusion. The power of silence. The art of not reacting. In a world addicted to noise, silence is rebellion. And in the realm of power, silence is dominance. When you stop reacting, you don't just avoid chaos. You control it. You change the rules. You walk away from the game they tried to trap you in. Suddenly, they don't set no what you set thinking. They don't set no how to provoke you. They don't set even know if you set still playing. Machiavelli once wrote, "It is not always necessary to strike. Sometimes not moving at all is the most devastating strike of all." Because when you withhold your response, you create pressure, a vacuum, one that forces the other side to talk more, reveal more, panic more, and in that panic, they expose themselves. Most people are trained to respond instantly to every insult, every provocation, every attempt to bait them. The moment you react, you've been hooked. You are no longer sovereign. You're being pulled by strings you don't see. But when you resist, when you say nothing, they collapse under the weight of their own projections. Manipulators hate silence. They can't use it. They can't control it. They can't predict it. You don't need to shout. You don't need to prove. You don't need to win arguments. Silence is the end of their narrative. It dismantles manipulation without you lifting a finger. Carl Jung believed silence connects you to your true self. Machiavelli would push further. He'd say it disconnects your enemies from theirs. It turns their aggression inward. It makes them destroy themselves in the void you leave behind. This is not weakness. This is psychological warfare. They waste, you conserve. They attack, you observe. They burn out, you sharpen. Here is the rule. He who speaks first exposes himself. He who reacts loses control. But he who holds his silence owns the moment. Let the silence stretch. Let them feel it. Let their words echo back at them with no reply to hide behind. Because in silence, you reveal everything while showing nothing. If this resonates, type it in the comments. My silence commands. You don't owe anyone an explanation. You only owe yourself peace. You were conditioned to justify your silence, to apologize for your boundaries, to defend your need for solitude. You were taught to make everyone else comfortable, even at the cost of your own peace. Machiavelli would call this a fatal mistake. He wrote, "He who justifies every step grants others the right to question it, and once they feel entitled to question it, they will never stop." Every time you say, "I'm sorry I didn't reply," or "I was just overwhelmed," you reinforce a dangerous lie, that you owe explanations for living on your own terms. But you don't. You never did. Your silence is not offense. It is declaration. Your boundaries are not cold. They are the foundation of self-respect. Your detachment is not arrogance. It is the adjustment of a man who finally sees how much he gave and how little was ever returned. The moment you stop explaining, you take back something sacred, authority over your own story. Because when people grow used to your explanations, they stop respecting your instincts. They expect justification for every move, and when you refuse, they panic. But that panic is theirs to carry, not yours. You are not here to ease everyone's fears. You are not here to be universally liked. You are here to be clear about who you are, what you accept, and who has access to you. Machiavelli said a ruler must choose between being loved and being respected. Only one guarantees order. Too many men choose love, and in doing so, they become servants of emotion, prisoners of perception. They give their energy to everyone but themselves. But clarity is a sword, and silence is its sheath. You hold both when you stop defending your peace. So when someone tells you, "You've changed," just smile. Not because they're wrong, but because they've finally noticed. You're not here to be available. You're not here to be explainable. You're here to evolve, and evolution does not require permission. So let them speculate. Let them misinterpret. Let them invent stories to explain the access they no longer have. Because every man who rises into sovereignty must first bear the guilt of no longer being available to those who only loved his obedience. If you feel this shift happening within you, if you know this transformation is real, then carve this into your identity. I owe no explanations for protecting my peace, the pain of withdrawal, and the rebirth of power. There's a kind of pain few men ever speak about. It doesn't come from betrayal, failure, or loss. It comes from the silence that follows withdrawal. You stop replying, you stop explaining, you step away from the roles others assign to you. At first, it feels like freedom, then doubt sets in. Soon after, you feel the loneliness, the emptiness, the quiet space where their expectations once lived. You begin to question yourself. Did I go too far? Was I too harsh? Did I burn bridges I still needed? But Machiavelli would meet you in that silence with something sharper than comfort. He'd say, power is not born in applause, but in isolation. And isolation is not punishment, it is purification. This isn't the pain of losing people. It's the pain of losing the version of yourself that needed their approval, the version that lived for validation, that stayed in rooms just to feel useful. You're not suffering from solitude, you're suffering from withdrawal. Withdrawal from the addiction of being needed, from the comfort of being expected, from the illusion of being liked. Because every time you said yes to avoid conflict, you said no to yourself. Every time you showed up just to prove you were good, you moved further away from what made you strong. Machiavelli would call this what it truly is, a strategic death, the kind of death that comes before rebirth. Because until the obedient version of you dies, the sovereign one cannot rise. So let it hurt, let it burn, let the echoes of your old self resist and protest. That ache you feel isn't weakness, it's detox. And what rises in that empty space is far more dangerous than before. A man who no longer needs permission, a man who doesn't explain, a man who disappears and returns as his own force of nature. Carl Jung called this individuation the process of integrating your fragmented self into something whole. Machiavelli would describe it as a transfer of power, not granted to you, but taken back from those who once fed on your need to be seen. It will be uncomfortable. It will feel unnatural. But so does every real transformation. The lion isn't born in a crowd. He is born in solitude. And when he roars, it isn't for approval. It's because he remembers his own voice. So don't run from the pain. Stand in it. Let it cut. Let it cleanse. Let it crown you. You didn't lose them. You lost the illusion of them. And in doing so, you found yourself. If you feel this change rising within, write in the comments, "My solitude is my sanctuary." The true power of selective presence, how distance creates value. There is a difference between being seen and being remembered, between being present and being respected, between being liked and being valued. Most men confuse attention with influence. But Machiavelli saw deeper. He wrote, "The prince who is always seen becomes ordinary, but the one who controls when and how he appears becomes unforgettable." Your presence used to be constant, predictable, accessible, and that made you convenient, not powerful. Because what is always available loses its mystery. What is always accessible loses its weight. What is always present becomes invisible. You showed up before they wondered. You responded before they missed you. You explained before they even questioned. And in doing so, you trained them to treat you as background in your own story. But here's the truth. Scarcity creates value. Distance and absence, when intentional, create power. You don't need to disappear completely. You need to become selective with your presence. When you speak too often, your words lose weight. When you speak less, every word lands with force. When you are everywhere, you become noise. When you appear only when it matters, you become signal. Machiavelli called this calculated absence, not to play games, but to build gravity. He'd say, let them feel your absence, so they remember the cost of your presence. This isn't manipulation, it's asset protection. Your time, your energy, your attention, these are not free handouts, they are investments, and not everyone qualifies. So here's the new standard. Not everyone gets a reply. Not everyone gets an explanation. Not everyone earns your presence. The more they assume you'll show up, the more you must challenge that assumption. Because when they don't know where you stand, they begin to feel your influence. Think of gold. Its value isn't just in its shine, it's in its rarity, its protection, and the difficulty of access. So ask yourself, why should your presence be any less valuable? Why should your attention be handed out like a free sample? The man who is always seen is soon forgotten, but the man who chooses when to appear, how to speak, and when to step away becomes a presence they cannot afford to waste. This isn't arrogance. This is sovereignty. It is the behavior of kings, of men who exist, not for convenience, but for consequence. From now on, your attention is currency. Your presence is leverage. Your absence is a reminder. So, with every message, every meeting, every interaction, ask yourself, has this person earned my presence, or are they simply expecting it? If you feel that shift within you, write this in the comments. My presence is earned. The Machiavellian Code: power, silence, and strategic presence. What you've just heard is not a guide to being liked. It's not self-help. It's not therapy. This is strategy, a psychological war, a battle between who you were trained to be and who you must now become. Machiavelli never promised peace. He promised clarity. He didn't teach comfort. He taught control. He didn't value kindness without power. He valued power wrapped in kindness and the discipline to withdraw when kindness became a leash. If you've listened closely, you now understand one truth. A man who does not command himself will be commanded by others, and command begins with one act: withdrawal. Withdrawal from weakness. Withdrawal from over-explaining. Withdrawal from emotional servitude. Withdrawal from being the man who shows up for everyone but himself. When you withdraw, you create distance, and in that distance, you become unreadable, untouchable, ungovernable. That is the foundation of real power. Because when you no longer respond on demand, they don't just question where you went, they question what they lost. When you no longer justify every decision, you don't just build boundaries, you create standards. And the moment you stop chasing clarity from others, you begin building certainty within yourself. You stop performing. You stop apologizing. You stop explaining your growth to people who only valued your obedience. Machiavelli would remind you, this power is not granted. It is taken, and it is kept, not by force, but by calculation. You are not here to be endlessly available. You are not here to be universally understood. You are not here to be accessible on demand. You are here to rule your inner world like a kingdom, to decide who enters, who stays, and who never receives a key again. This is the Machiavellian man. He doesn't over-explain. He doesn't react. He doesn't beg to be noticed. He speaks when it serves him. He vanishes when it strengthens him, and he returns only when the terrain is his. Your new life will not begin with applause. It begins in silence, and it ends in dominance, not over others, but over the one thing that was always taken from you, your self-command. From this moment on, let others gossip. Let them speculate. Let them miss you. But you withdraw, observe, and return only when it serves you. Because, as Machiavelli knew, the game does not belong to the honest. It belongs to the prepared. And now you are prepared.